A single dad gave her refuge from the storm, only to realize she was a CEO who needed more than shelter. Street lamps flickered as gusts of wind pushed against the buildings, rattling windows and shaking signs. People hurried through the streets, heads down, clutching umbrellas that bent and twisted under the sudden force of the storm. Mark Patel, a single father, was tinkering in his small workshop at the back of his house. The hum of machines and the soft glow of LED panels filled the room, a quiet comfort after a long day. Mark loved evenings like this, not too cold, not too warm, and the world outside was contained behind walls and glass. He wiped his hands on a rag and looked out the window. Rain had started to fall, softly at first, then harder, pounding the roof with a sudden urgency. The wind howled and Mark felt the first shiver of unease. He glanced at the clock, almost 8. His daughter, Lily, was upstairs finishing her homework. She loved storms. She said they made the world feel alive, but Mark had learned to respect their power. Then movement caught his eye. A figure stumbled on the street, arms wrapped around herself, struggling against the wind and rain. The umbrella she carried was useless, torn in half, flapping like a broken bird. Mark's instincts kicked in. He grabbed his coat and ran to the door, opening it just enough to shout, "Hey, are you okay?" The woman froze, then saw him. Her eyes were wide, a mix of surprise and relief. She nodded quickly, but the wind almost knocked her over again. Mark held the door wider and gestured for her to come inside. "Quick, come in," he shouted, raising his voice above the storm. She hesitated for a heartbeat, then darted inside. Rainwater dripped from her hair and coat, soaking the floor. Mark handed her a towel. "Here, dry off," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "You're lucky I saw you." "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I didn't expect anyone to be out here tonight." Mark studied her for a moment. She looked ordinary, maybe in her late 20s, but there was something in her eyes, a sharpness, a quiet confidence. She shook off the wetness, folding the towel carefully. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to trouble you," she added. "You're not troubling anyone." "Come on, I've got hot tea ready," Mark said. He motioned to the small living room where a fire crackled gently in the hearth. Lily, hearing voices, peeked down the stairs. "Daddy, who's here?" she asked, curiosity bright in her eyes. "Someone who needs a little shelter from the storm," Mark said with a smile. "Come meet her, Lily." The woman smiled at the little girl, her expression softening. "Hi, I'm Clara," she said. "Hi, Clara. Do you like chocolate chip cookies?" Lily asked immediately, running to the kitchen. Clara laughed lightly, a sound that seemed to mix relief and amusement. "I do, yes, very much." Mark followed Lily into the kitchen. The storm raged outside, but inside the house felt warm and alive. He placed a kettle on the stove while Clara hung her wet coat over a chair. "So, how did you end up in this weather?" Mark asked casually. Clara shrugged. "I was on my way home, and then the storm surprised me." "I didn't expect it to get this strong." Mark nodded, understanding. "Yeah, the weather's been unpredictable lately. Climate systems are advanced now, but storms like this still sneak through." Clara's eyes flicked to a small device on Mark's workbench. "You work with energy systems?" she asked, curiosity in her tone. Mark nodded, a little surprised. "Yeah, I design small renewable systems for homes, trying to make life easier for people and the planet." Her eyes lit up and she leaned slightly forward. "That's impressive." "It's not easy to optimize energy flow efficiently." Mark smiled. He wasn't used to people noticing his work. Most of his conversations revolved around bills, groceries, or Lily's school. "Thanks," he said. "It's a hobby that pays the bills. What about you? What do you do?" Clara hesitated, then waved her hand vaguely. "I work in technology, big projects, complicated stuff." She didn't give details, but Mark didn't push. He was used to some people being private. Lily came back holding a plate of warm cookies. "Here. One for you, Clara," she said cheerfully. Clara took a cookie with both hands. "Thank you, Lily, that's very kind of you." She bit into it, savoring the taste. Her eyes softened as she looked around the room, noting the small family photos, the books, and the cozy furniture. Mark took a seat nearby. "So, Clara, do you get stuck out in storms often?" he asked, trying to keep the conversation light. She laughed softly. "Not really. Usually I'm more prepared, but tonight life had other plans." The storm outside intensified, tapping against the windows like a drumbeat. Mark felt a strange calm inside, as if the world had slowed down, leaving only this small, warm space. Clara seemed to notice the calm too, her gaze resting on the fire. "I like your home," she said quietly. "It feels safe." Mark smiled, feeling a little embarrassed. "Thanks. Lily and we try to make it cozy, safe, a place to relax even when the world gets noisy outside." She nodded, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames. "I can see that. You've built more than a home, you've built a sanctuary." Mark felt a pang of surprise. Not many people described his life that way. He glanced at Lily, who was busy explaining the plot of her school project with great enthusiasm. The warmth and simplicity of this small scene felt important, more than just ordinary. After a while, Mark poured hot tea for Clara and himself. The aroma of herbs filled the air. They sipped quietly, listening to the rain battering the roof. Outside, the storm seemed to rage with increasing strength, but inside, everything felt contained, safe, and human. Clara's gaze wandered around the room again. She paused at a small solar panel diagram on the wall. "You designed this?" she asked. Mark nodded. "Yes, my own system. Helps keep the energy bills low and makes the house nearly self-sufficient." Her eyes widened slightly. "I've seen similar designs, but yours is unusually efficient, very clever." Mark felt a flicker of pride, then curiosity. "You know about this kind of work?" Clara smiled faintly, almost shyly. "I've seen a lot in my line of work. Technology, energy systems, sustainable design. I'm fascinated by practical applications." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Fascinated, huh? That's unusual for someone out in the storm tonight." Clara laughed quietly, a small, genuine sound that made Lily peek up from her homework. "Life has a way of putting you in unexpected places," she said softly. The storm continued through the night, but the three of them sat together, talking quietly. Mark realized how rare this moment was: human connection, warmth, and curiosity all intertwined. He didn't know why, but something about Clara made the storm outside feel less threatening, less chaotic. At some point, Lily fell asleep on the couch, a blanket pulled over her small shoulders. Mark looked at Clara, who was quietly watching her. "You're a good friend to my daughter," he said. Clara shook her head slightly. "I'm just grateful to be here. You've offered more than shelter from the storm. You've offered kindness." Mark felt a lump in his throat. It was rare for someone to see the value in what he did in the life he led. "It's nothing special. Anyone would do the same." She smiled, but it didn't hide the truth in her eyes. "Not everyone would. You and Lily, you've reminded me that people can be extraordinary in ordinary ways." The rain eased slightly outside, tapping against the window with a softer rhythm. Mark felt a strange sense of peace. Tomorrow, the world would resume its pace, and Clara would leave. But tonight they shared something important, something quiet, human, and rare. As Mark glanced at the darkening sky, he realized storms didn't only bring destruction. Sometimes they brought people together in the most unexpected ways. And sometimes the strangers you help change your life more than you imagine. The storm had passed, leaving the city glistening under streetlights reflecting off wet pavements. Morning fog hung lightly, curling around the buildings like a quiet ghost of the night's chaos. Inside Mark's small home, the warmth of the previous night lingered. Lily sat at the kitchen table, finishing her breakfast, humming softly. Clara, now fully awake, was sipping tea, gazing out the window at the quiet streets. Mark poured himself a cup and joined her. "Looks like the worst of it is gone," he said. Clara nodded. "Yes, it's peaceful now, almost like nothing happened." Lily looked between them. You can stay for breakfast, Clara. Daddy makes pancakes really well, Clara smiled, amused by Lily's enthusiasm. I would love that, Lily, thank you. As they ate, the conversation flowed naturally. Clara was polite, curious, and observant. She asked Lily questions about school and her favorite books, and Lily eagerly answered, sometimes adding exaggerated gestures to make her stories funnier. Mark watched them, quietly pleased. Seeing his daughter so happy was a rare joy. After breakfast, Mark and Clara moved to the living room. Clara had asked to see more of Mark's workshop. I saw the solar diagram last night, she said. I want to see how your system works in practice. Mark led her to the back, showing her rows of neatly organized tools, panels, and small electronic devices. This is my control unit, he explained. It manages energy storage and distribution. The goal is efficiency without complicated systems. Clara leaned in, examining the setup carefully. I like how you've minimized energy loss here, she said, pointing to a small connector. Most home systems waste power unnecessarily. You've solved that elegantly. Mark blinked. You know about this. Clara shrugged lightly, a faint smile on her lips. I've studied different systems. I find practical applications more interesting than theory alone. Mark laughed softly. Well, you're in the right place. I'm very hands-on. Clara's gaze lingered on a small drone on a shelf. Is that for surveillance? She asked. Mark shook his head. No, nothing like that. It's a personal assistant drone mainly for deliveries or carrying small things around. Lily likes to use it for little experiments. Clara nodded, eyes curious. I see, very clever. You've created a balance between technology and usability. Mark felt a little flattered. Most people didn't notice these details. He glanced at Clara. There was a quiet confidence about her, a subtle intelligence that made him wonder what kind of life she led. Do you live around here? He asked cautiously. Clara hesitated. Yes, nearby, but my home is usually very different from this. Mark raised an eyebrow. Different how? She smiled faintly. Bigger, busier, more structured, but sometimes a smaller, quieter place feels better. More human, Mark nodded, understanding more than he expected. Yeah, life can get hectic. Sometimes you need a place to just breathe. For a moment they stood in silence, listening to Lily laughing upstairs as she tried to make a paper airplane. The simplicity of the sound made the room feel warmer. Then Clara said softly, Your daughter, she's very bright. Mark smiled proudly. Yeah, she is. She's curious about everything. Science, nature, stories, she asks a million questions every day. Clara's eyes softened. She reminds me of why I became interested in technology in the first place. The curiosity, the drive to understand, it's refreshing to see it in someone so young. Mark felt a small pang of surprise. Most adults didn't notice things like that. You must be used to seeing big projects, big numbers, big everything. You notice the small stuff too, Clara nodded. Sometimes the small stuff is more important than the big stuff, especially when it comes to people. Mark paused, studying her expression. There was honesty in her words. She wasn't just being polite, she meant it. He wondered how many people in her life could actually say that. Lily came running down the stairs, holding a tablet. Daddy, Clara, look at this, she said. I made a model of the solar system for school. Can you check it? Clara smiled warmly. Of course, Lily, let's see. She crouched next to the little girl, pointing at the planets and explaining gently how orbits worked. Lily's eyes widened with excitement as she listened. Clara didn't just tell her things, she made them understandable and fun. Mark watched quietly. It struck him how naturally Clara connected with Lily, not just in teaching, but in listening, encouraging, and showing genuine interest. For someone so clearly intelligent, she had a warmth that surprised him. After a while, they moved back to the living room. Clara sipped her tea, looking thoughtful. You've created a nice life here, Mark. I can see why your daughter is so happy. Mark shrugged modestly. It's not much, but it works. Simple, honest human, that's enough for us. Clara's eyes flickered. Sometimes I forget what enough feels like. In my world, everything is measured, projects, deadlines, performance, results. But here it feels different, real. Mark nodded slowly. I get that. Life can get busy, but maybe real isn't about deadlines or projects, it's about the people you care for. Clara looked at him, a faint smile forming. Maybe you're right. Maybe real is quieter than we think. They shared a long silence, comfortable and reflective. Outside, the city was coming back to life. Shops opened, people walked quickly along the streets, and the sun peeked through the dissipating clouds. The storm was over, but its memory lingered in puddles and dripping leaves. Then Clara asked quietly, "Mark, can I ask you something?" "Sure," he said, curious. "Why do you do all this on your own, building systems, raising a child, keeping everything balanced?" Mark smiled faintly. "Because it has to be done, and because I want to. It's not always easy, but Lily makes it worth it. She's the best part of my life." Clara nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I can see that. You're extraordinary in your own way." Mark laughed softly. "Extraordinary, maybe ordinary with extra coffee and patience." Clara chuckled. "Ordinary with heart. That's extraordinary enough." For the rest of the morning, they worked together on small tasks. Clara helped Mark adjust a panel that had been acting up, suggesting minor improvements that made it run smoother. Lily chimed in, asking questions and trying to help. At one point, Clara accidentally knocked over a small stack of tools. She laughed nervously. "Sorry, I'm usually more careful." Mark waved it off. "No problem, happens to everyone." They returned the tools to their places and Clara looked at Mark, curious. "You really do all this alone?" "Yes," he said simply. "It's just me and Lily. We manage. It's not glamorous, but it's home." Clara nodded slowly. Her mind wandered, thinking about her own life. Always busy, always surrounded by people, but somehow lonely. Here, in this small home, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: normalcy, safety, and warmth. Later, as afternoon turned into evening, they sat in the living room again. Lily was drawing quietly while Mark and Clara drank tea. Clara's eyes scanned the room. Books, plants, pictures on the wall, simple things, but each told a story. "You've built a strong human life here," Clara said quietly. "Not easy to do, but very alive." Mark shrugged. "I try. It's not perfect, but it works." Clara's gaze softened. "It works because of love. That's something you can't engineer. You either have it or you don't." Mark looked at her, surprised by the insight. "You sound like someone who deals with a lot of engineering and people." Clara smiled faintly. "I deal with systems, yes. People not always, but I'm learning. Moments like this, they teach more than any book or report." Mark felt a strange warmth in his chest. He realized that Clara was not only intelligent, but she was also humble in a way that made her presence comforting. She had stepped into their life like a gust of wind, unexpected, yet welcome. As the evening sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow through the windows, Clara stood and stretched. "I should get going soon. I don't want to impose too much." Mark shook his head. "You're not imposing. It's been nice. For Lily, for me, for all of us." Clara's eyes softened as she looked at Lily. "Thank you for letting me be part of your storm. I'll remember this." Lily ran to hug her. "Come visit again, okay?" Clara hugged her back, smiling. "I promise." Mark felt a quiet sense of gratitude. This storm, which had seemed disruptive and threatening, had brought someone extraordinary into their lives. He didn't yet know how or why, but Clara's presence left a mark, a gentle, lasting impression of connection and curiosity. Outside, the city continued its rhythm, people moving on after the storm. But inside this small home, the ordinary became extraordinary, and the bonds formed in unexpected ways began to take shape. And Mark had a feeling this was only the beginning. The next morning arrived quietly. Sunlight slipped through the curtains and spread softly across the living room floor. The city outside looked clean and fresh, as if the storm had washed away more than just dust and rain. Birds rested on power lines and the sound of distant traffic returned, calm and steady. Mark was already awake. He stood in the kitchen, preparing breakfast while the house slowly came to life. Cooking was his peaceful routine. It gave him time to think, to plan the day, and to feel grounded. Clara sat at the table, scrolling through something on her wrist device. When she noticed Mark watching, she quickly turned the screen off and smiled. "Sorry," she said. "Habit." "No worries," Mark replied. "Coffee or tea today?" "Coffee would be great," she said, "if that's okay." Mark poured her a cup. "Strong or light?" She paused. "Strong, very strong," he smiled. "Got it." Lily came downstairs, rubbing her eyes. "Morning," she said sleepily. "Good morning, sunshine," Mark said. Lily looked at Clara and grinned. "You're still here," Clara laughed softly. "Looks like it." They sat together for breakfast. Pancakes, fruit, and coffee filled the table. The conversation was light at first: school, weather, small plans for the day, but Clara seemed distracted. Her eyes often drifted to her wrist device, though she tried not to show it. Mark noticed. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. Clara hesitated. "Yes, just responsibilities catching up." Mark nodded. "That happens." After breakfast, Lily went outside to play with her small drone in the yard. Mark and Clara stayed inside. The house was quiet again, but not uncomfortable. Clara stood near the window. "Mark, I owe you honesty." He turned to her, surprised but calm. "Okay." She took a deep breath. "I wasn't fully honest about my work." Mark raised an eyebrow but stayed silent. "I'm not just someone who works in technology," she continued. "I lead a company, a very large one." Mark blinked. "Lead as in manager." "As in CEO," she said quietly. The word hung in the air. Mark didn't react right away. He didn't laugh or panic. He simply looked at her, trying to understand. "A CEO," he repeated. "Yes," Clara said, "of one of the largest technology and environmental companies in the region." Mark leaned back against the counter. "Wow. I didn't plan to hide it," she said quickly. "I just wanted to be normal for once. No expectations, no titles." Mark nodded slowly. "That explains a few things." Clara smiled nervously. "Like what?" "Like how you understand energy systems better than most professionals," he said, "and why you seem used to pressure." She sighed with relief. "I was afraid you'd be upset." Mark shook his head. "Why would I be? You didn't hurt anyone. You needed shelter, that's all." Clara looked at him carefully. "You're not angry." "No," Mark said honestly. "Surprised, sure, but angry, no." She smiled, softer this time. "Thank you." They sat down at the table. Clara continued. "My company works on large-scale solutions, AI systems, climate control networks, energy grids. We design technology for cities, even entire regions." Mark nodded. "That's big." "Yes," she said. "Too big sometimes. I spend most of my life in meetings, flights, reports. Always solving problems but rarely seeing the people affected by them." She gestured around the room. "Here I see it, real people, real lives." Mark thought about that. "Big systems matter," he said, "but so do small ones, homes, families." "That's what I'm realizing," Clara said quietly. There was a pause. "Why were you really out in the storm?" Mark asked gently. She hesitated, then answered honestly. "I walked out of a corporate event. Too much noise, too many expectations. I needed air. Then the storm came." Mark smiled faintly. "Life has strange timing." "Yes," she agreed. "Very strange." Outside, Lily's laughter drifted through the open window. Clara watched her for a moment. "You've built something powerful here," she said. "Not in size, but in impact." Mark shrugged. "I just do my best." Clara stood and walked toward the workshop. "May I show you something?" "Sure." She activated her wrist device again. This time she didn't hide it. A clean interface appeared, filled with data and models. "This is a prototype system my company is developing," she explained. "It's designed to manage energy at the city level." Mark leaned closer, interested. "Impressive." "But incomplete," Clara added. "It lacks something." "What's that?" "Human adaptability," she said. "Your system, your home system, responds to behavior, not just numbers." Mark blinked. "I designed it that way. People don't live like machines." Clara smiled. Exactly. She turned the device toward him. Would you help me? Mark was surprised. Help you? Yes, she said. Improve it, make it more human. Mark hesitated. I'm just one engineer. One very good one, Clara replied. And more importantly, you understand people. Mark thought about Lily, about his home, about the simple choices he made every day. I'll think about it, he said. That's all I ask, Clara replied. Later that afternoon, Lily came inside excited. Clara, Daddy, the drone battery lasted longer today, Mark smiled. That's good. Clara crouched down. Why do you think that happened? Lily thought hard. Because Daddy changed how it saves power, Clara nodded. Smart thinking. Lily beamed. As the day passed, Clara received more alerts on her device. She ignored most of them, but eventually she sighed. I have to return soon, she said. Mark felt a small sting of disappointment. I figured. But before I do, she continued, I want to do something. She tapped her device again and sent a message. What did you just do? Mark asked. I scheduled a visit, she said. My team will come here, not to inspect. To learn, Mark looked at her surprised. Here, to my house. Yes, Clara said. I want them to see what works on a human level. Mark laughed lightly. They'll be disappointed, no fancy labs. They'll be inspired, Clara corrected. That evening they ate dinner together again. The conversation felt deeper now, more open. I don't want to lose this, Clara said quietly. This feeling. You don't have to, Mark said. You just have to remember it. She nodded. I will. As night fell, Clara stood at the door ready to leave. A sleek transport vehicle waited at the curb. Lily hugged her tightly. You'll come back, right? Clara hugged her back. Yes, I promise. She turned to Mark. Thank you for everything. Mark smiled. You found shelter from a storm, that's all. Clara shook her head. No, I found perspective. She stepped outside, then paused. Mark, the world needs more people like you. Mark watched as the vehicle drove away, disappearing into the city lights. The house felt quiet again. But not empty. Mark looked around his home. It was still the same, small, simple, warm. But now it felt connected to something bigger, not through power or money, but through humanity. And somewhere in the city, a CEO carried that lesson with her, ready to change more than just systems. The following week arrived quietly, with clear skies and the soft warmth of sunlight streaming through the city. Mark's home, small and cozy, felt alive in a new way. Clara's visit had left an impression on both him and Lily. Their little routines, breakfast together, short walks, small talks, felt more special, more connected. Clara arrived mid-morning, dressed casually, without the stiffness that often came with her CEO role. She smiled as she entered the house carrying a small notebook. Good morning, Mark greeted her. You made it. Yes, Clara said, her voice calm, almost content. I kept my promise. Lily ran to meet her. Clara, I want to show you something, she exclaimed. I fixed the drone to last even longer. Clara crouched down, examining the little machine. Excellent work, Lily. You're learning faster than I expected. Lily beamed with pride. Daddy taught me some tricks, but you showed me even more. Mark smiled quietly. Watching Clara and Lily interact, he realized just how natural her presence had become in their lives. It wasn't just curiosity or kindness. Clara genuinely cared. After breakfast, they moved to Mark's workshop. Clara had been thinking about the project she had hinted at last week, the city-level energy management system. But today, she wanted to take a different approach. Mark, she said, I want to see how you work with Lily, how you integrate technology into everyday life. Not as a CEO, but as a father and engineer. Mark raised an eyebrow. You mean like you want me to teach you how I think? Exactly, Clara said. I need to understand human decision-making beyond numbers and data. Mark chuckled. All right, but don't expect it to be fancy. My methods are simple, Clara nodded, smiling. Simple can be powerful. They spent the morning working together. Mark demonstrated how the home energy system responded to small changes, turning lights on or off, running the dishwasher. adjusting room temperature based on activity. Clara asked questions, observed patterns, and even suggested small tweaks that improved efficiency without compromising simplicity. Your system adapts, she said thoughtfully. It reacts to human behavior, not just commands. That's rare. Because life isn't linear, Mark replied. People are unpredictable. Systems have to account for that. Clara nodded, impressed. I've worked with complex AI, predictive models, city planning software, but seeing it applied here, it's different, more intuitive. Mark smiled faintly. Intuition is something you can't program easily. You either learn it or you don't. As they worked, Lily joined in, offering suggestions with excitement. Clara encouraged her ideas, making small adjustments together. Lily's joy and curiosity reminded Clara of her own childhood, a time when imagination and learning were intertwined, unrestricted by schedules or responsibilities. After a while, they moved outside to the yard. The sun was warm on their faces, and the city seemed peaceful. Clara watched Lily chase the small drone as it hovered and zipped through the garden. You know, Clara said softly, you've created more than technology here. You've created an environment where people thrive. Mark laughed lightly. That sounds like a big compliment for a small house. It's true, Clara insisted. This place encourages learning, curiosity, and creativity. That's rare, Mark. Most systems I work with in the corporate world ignore people completely. Mark paused. And you want to bring that back to your world? Yes, she said. I want my team to see it, to learn that efficiency isn't just numbers, it's people, life. Small acts can have big consequences. They spent the afternoon experimenting. Clara suggested a new configuration for the home's energy system, based on how Lily and Mark used it daily. Mark implemented it, and they observed the results. Clara's adjustments made the system more responsive, yet still simple. You're bridging worlds, Mark said quietly. Your life and mine, it's like two different systems connecting. Clara smiled. That's the idea. We don't have to be the same to work together. We just have to respect the differences. As the sun began to lower, casting long golden shadows across the yard, they took a break. Clara sat on the porch steps watching Lily play. Mark, she said quietly, do you ever feel like your life is small, limited? Mark shook his head. No, it's full in its own way. Sure, I don't manage cities or billion-dollar projects, but I manage a life, and it matters to me. To Lily, that's enough. Clara nodded slowly, thinking. I manage millions of people's lives indirectly, but I often forget what it feels like to affect someone personally. Here I see it, and it matters more than I expected. Mark looked at her. You're learning something important. Don't forget it when you go back, she smiled. I won't. That's why I'm here. Evening approached and they prepared dinner together. Clara chopped vegetables while Mark cooked and Lily set the table. They talked and laughed, the kind of comfortable chatter that made the house feel warm and alive. Clara shared some stories from her childhood, carefully leaving out anything that might overwhelm the little girl. You had a pretty normal childhood, Mark asked, curious. For the most part, Clara admitted, curious, adventurous, until responsibilities became heavy. Then it was all schedules and obligations. Sounds familiar, Mark said lightly. Life has a way of making things complicated. Clara laughed softly. Yes. But sometimes you find a moment where it feels simple again. She gestured around the kitchen. Like this. After dinner, they cleaned up together. Clara observed the small routines. The way Mark encouraged Lily to wash her hands thoroughly. The gentle reminders about cleaning up without turning it into a chore. It was a rhythm of care, patience, and responsibility that Clara rarely witnessed in her corporate life. Later, they gathered in the living room. Clara looked thoughtful. Mark, I've been thinking I need to make changes in my work. Your home has inspired me. I want to bring more human connection into my systems, but I don't know where to start. Mark considered this. Start small. Observe how people behave. Pay attention to what matters to them, and remember human life is messy. Plans won't always work perfectly. That's okay, Clara nodded. I think I understand. It's not about controlling everything. It's about understanding it, Mark smiled. Exactly. That's what you're learning here. Lily fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from the day's play. Mark and Clara sat quietly, watching her. The quiet house felt safe and warm, a stark contrast to the corporate towers Clara inhabited daily. I wish everyone in my world could see this, Clara said softly. The way you live, the way you care, it's inspiring. You can show them, Mark said. It doesn't have to be your home, just the ideas, the principles. Clara nodded. I will, I promise. The night deepened and Clara prepared to leave. She hugged Lily tightly. Thank you for today, Lily. You taught me a lot about curiosity and courage. Lily smiled sleepily. Come visit again, okay? Clara hugged her once more. I will. Mark watched as she walked to her transport vehicle. The city lights reflected off its sleek surface. Clara turned and waved. Thank you, Mark, for letting me see a different side of life. You're welcome, Mark said. As the vehicle drove away, Mark felt a sense of calm. Clara had brought more than her knowledge. She had brought perspective. She reminded him of the value in simplicity, in care, in human connection. And she had taken a piece of that lesson back to her world, where it could ripple out in unexpected ways. Mark looked at his quiet house, the soft hum of the energy system in the background, and felt pride. His world, though small, was powerful, full of love, learning, and resilience. And somewhere in the city, Clara carried a new understanding, a recognition that even in the largest systems, humanity mattered most. Tomorrow would bring challenges, both for Mark and Clara. But tonight, their worlds had connected. And that connection, though temporary, had already started to change them both. The night deepened further. Stars twinkled faintly through the city haze. Mark felt content, not because the world was perfect, but because, for one day, it had felt perfectly human. And that, he realized, was more important than anything else. The city hummed quietly as dawn broke. Golden light filtered through the buildings, reflecting softly on glass and metal. Birds sang faintly in the quiet streets, and the air smelled fresh, washed clean by the storm from days before. Mark was already awake. He stood in the kitchen, preparing breakfast, as he did every morning. It had become a small ritual, a grounding moment before the day began in earnest. Today, however, there was a sense of anticipation. Clara would arrive again, and he knew that this visit would feel different, less casual, more deliberate. The doorbell rang, a sharp sound cutting through the calm. Mark opened the door to see Clara standing there, holding a small bag and smiling warmly. "Good morning," she said. "I hope I'm not early." "Not at all," Mark replied. "Come in." Lily ran down the stairs, yawning but smiling. "Clara, you're here." Clara crouched and hugged her. "Good morning, Lily. Did you sleep well?" "Yes. Daddy let me finish my model yesterday," Lily said excitedly. "And I made new plans for the drone." Clara laughed softly. "I can't wait to see it." They had breakfast together, chatting casually, but the conversation soon shifted to the energy system project. Clara pulled out her notebook and wrist device, ready to discuss plans for implementing lessons she had learned from Mark and Lily into her company's work. "I've thought about what you said, Mark," Clara began. "About observing people, understanding them, not just designing for efficiency. I want my team to see this, but I don't know where to start." Mark smiled gently. "Start small. Show them examples, let them experience human life directly. Don't just explain it in meetings or presentations. Make it real." Clara nodded thoughtfully. "I want them to feel it, not just analyze it." The morning passed quickly. Mark and Clara worked together in the workshop, testing new ideas for energy efficiency, but always with a focus on human behavior. Lily joined in frequently, offering insights and observations that sometimes surprised the adults. Her questions and enthusiasm reminded Clara of what curiosity and learning looked like without deadlines, reports, or corporate pressures. "You see, Mark," Clara said as they adjusted a panel together, In my world, everything is measured, performance, output, deadlines. But here, the small changes matter. The way you adjust the system for Lily's habits, it's genius. Mark chuckled. It's just paying attention. You notice patterns, adjust accordingly. Nothing fancy. Clara shook her head. No, it's more than that, it's human. Most systems I work with ignore that. Lily called from the yard. Daddy, Clara, come see the drone. I fixed its battery again. They stepped outside. The drone hovered in the bright morning sunlight, spinning and turning smoothly as Lily controlled it. Clara watched closely, impressed by the little girl's focus and ingenuity. Mark, she said quietly, this is amazing. You've created an environment that encourages learning and creativity, not just routine. That's rare, Mark smiled. It's what we do. Life's messy, but it can be beautiful too. Clara nodded, taking it all in. She had spent years designing systems for millions of people, but nothing had taught her the value of small, human-centered details like this. Later, as they returned inside, Clara suggested they document some of their observations. She pulled out her device and began recording notes, sketches, and diagrams, not for reports or presentations, but as a record of what worked in real life. Mark, she said, I think this will help my team understand that technology isn't just about efficiency, it's about people. Mark nodded. Exactly. If they remember that, they'll design better systems. Afternoon turned to evening, and the three of them prepared dinner together. Clara chopped vegetables, Mark cooked, and Lily set the table with care. They talked and laughed, enjoying the simplicity of shared tasks. Clara shared stories of her childhood, carefully avoiding anything that might overwhelm Lily. You had a normal childhood? Mark asked. For the most part, Clara admitted. Curiosity, adventure, and then responsibilities became heavier. I had to grow up fast. Sounds familiar, Mark said lightly. Life has a way of making things complicated. Yes, Clara replied softly. But moments like this remind me what's important. After dinner, they washed dishes together. Clara watched the rhythm of Mark and Lily, the simple routines that formed the heart of their life. She realized that the small gestures, encouraging Lily to wash her hands, helping her fold a towel neatly, explaining science while making it fun, were the actions that made life meaningful. As the night fell, Clara prepared to leave. She packed her things and hugged Lily tightly. Thank you for everything, Lily, she said. You taught me curiosity, patience, and courage. Lily smiled sleepily. Come back soon, okay? I promise, Clara said. Mark walked her to the door. You've done more than learn, he said. You've brought lessons back to your world. That's powerful, Clara paused, looking at him thoughtfully. Mark, I don't want to leave this behind, I want to take it with me. You can, he said. You just have to remember it, apply it where it matters. Clara nodded. I will, I promise. She stepped outside. The sleek transport vehicle waited at the curb, its metallic surface gleaming in the city lights. She looked back at Mark and Lily. Thank you, she said softly, for showing me what matters. Safe journey, Mark said. The vehicle drove away, disappearing into the distance. The house felt quiet again, but not empty. Lily was asleep on the couch, exhausted from the day. Mark stood at the window, reflecting on the past week. He realized that small actions, the kindness of offering shelter, the patience of teaching a child, the care in designing simple systems, could ripple far beyond his home. Clara's life, once distant and corporate, had been touched by these small acts, and she would carry the lessons forward. Days passed. Clara returned to her office, re-engaging with her team, but she approached her work differently now. She encouraged engineers to observe human behavior, to test systems in real-life environments, and to value small details that affected people directly. Meetings included discussions about empathy, patience, and connection. Meanwhile, Mark and Lily continued their routines at home. The house remained small, simple, and full of warmth. Yet Mark noticed subtle changes in himself. He became more confident in his skills, more aware of the impact of his work, and more open to collaboration. Then one afternoon, a message arrived from Clara. She had organized a small visit for her team to experience a human-centered energy system firsthand. A few engineers arrived at Mark's home, observing the setup, interacting with Lily, and learning how small choices made a difference. Mark guided them patiently, explaining how each adjustment responded to real-world needs. Clara stood nearby, quietly watching, proud of what they were learning. By evening, the visitors had left, inspired. Clara turned to Mark. This is what I wanted. They understand now. They'll carry it forward." Mark smiled. "And you learned too." "Yes," she said. "More than I could have imagined." That night, Clara stayed for dinner one last time before returning to her city life. The mood was reflective, peaceful, and full of gratitude. "Mark," Clara said quietly, "thank you. Not just for shelter, but for perspective, patience, and insight. You've shown me what matters, and I'll carry it forward." "You don't need to thank me," Mark replied. "You needed a moment of clarity. You found it yourself." Lily hugged Clara tightly. "I'll miss you." "I'll miss you too, Lily," Clara said, smiling. "But I'll come back." After she left, Mark felt a profound sense of peace. Their worlds were different, one small, one vast, but connected through shared understanding, respect, and human kindness. The next morning, Mark walked Lily to the park, noticing the small things: the sound of birds, the laughter of children, the way the sunlight fell on leaves. Life was simple, yes, but powerful. And he understood now more than ever that ordinary humans could create extraordinary impact, not through wealth, power, or technology alone, but through care, creativity, and empathy. Clara's influence would ripple far beyond this small home. Her team would carry lessons about human connection into the corporate world. Innovations would follow not just from logic, but from understanding real human needs. And all of it had started with one storm, one small home, and the simple act of offering refuge. Mark looked at Lily, smiling as she played. He realized that extraordinary moments didn't always come in loud, dramatic ways. Sometimes they arrived quietly, carried on the shoulders of ordinary people making thoughtful choices every day. And for Mark, Lily, and Clara, life had changed forever. Not in grand, obvious ways, but in small, meaningful ones that mattered more than anything else. The city stretched beyond the horizon, vast and complex. Yet in a small corner of it, warmth, care, and human ingenuity thrived. And that was enough. The world, they realized, could be better. One choice, one lesson, one connection at a time.